السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته بسم الله الحمد لله الصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. Welcome everybody from around the world. My name is Bilal Abdul Kareem and this is the BAK show. We are coming at you live from the studio here at QNG, that's Qibla News Global. And we're going to be talking to you today about the offensive which has been taking place over, I would say, probably the last 65 hours here in northern Aleppo. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about its reasons, its successes, and so on and so forth. Firstly, I am Bilal Abdul Kareem, and we want everybody to. Okay, let's see. Are we having connection issues here? Let's take a look. Okay. All right, everybody. I think we're back. I think we might have zoned out for a second here. Anyway, we're going to be talking about this issue, and we're going to be taking your questions, your comments, and your concerns. If we can answer your question, we're going to do that. If we can't answer it, well, then we're going to kind of bypass it until we can answer it and get the answer for you. Okay, everybody, we got to talk about what's happened over the last 65 hours. But let's go back just a little bit. First of all, as everybody already knows, rebel forces have rebelled against Syrian President Bashar al-Assad and his forces dating back to 2011. Large portions of Syria were taken out from the control of Bashar al-Assad between 2000 and late 2011 and into 2015. Now, in 2015, Russia was asked to join the fray by Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. The Iranians also were asked to join in and pitch in. Now, these are two long-term, or I should say, old acquaintances of the Syrian government. Much of their weaponry comes from Russia, and the Iranians are a long supporter of Bashar al-Assad and his family. Now that we've got all of that plugged in, how did we get here? Well, rebel forces were in control of eastern Aleppo city up until 2016, when a huge bombing campaign took place, killing thousands of people in eastern Aleppo. I was in the siege of Aleppo, as most people might already know. And eventually, the rebel forces were forced out of Aleppo. That's eastern Aleppo. And that's dating back to the last few days of 2016, the first few days of 2017. Now, 65 hours ago, an assault was launched from the Idlib areas. We're going to take a look and see on the map. Let's look at this right back here. I think you can get an idea. Okay, this right here, this is Idlib. Okay? All of these areas are Idlib. Now, this is the countryside of Aleppo, all right? And this is where the attacks were launched from these areas outward. Now, originally, it started out as just 3 different battlefronts in attacking the Bashar al-Assad forces and trying to reach into the city of Aleppo. Then it quickly expanded in the evening when forces from the Olive Branch and the Darafurat, the Euphrates Shield areas, flooded in to aid and assist the HTS initially launched attacks. So when they came aboard, it opened up and ballooned to more than 12 different fronts where the attacks were taking place on the countryside of Aleppo, where they were trying to reach into this area right here, which is the city of Aleppo. Now, were they successful? They were very successful. Just over these last 65 hours, 100 villages and towns have been taken. 100 villages and towns have been taken, and almost all of the governorate of Aleppo has been taken out from the control of Bashar al-Assad. That includes his forces that are loyal to him, the Iranian forces, and we haven't heard much from the from the Hezbollah front here in Syria. They've been very, very low key if they're still operating here. That's another story. Okay, let's go back. Let's take a look at a different map here so you can get an idea in terms of what we're looking at. Let's take a look at this. Okay. All right, look. The green areas are areas which were already under rebel control. The red area are the areas that were under Bashar al-Assad's control. Rebel forces have taken over these territories. You see this green line here? These are areas in which rebel forces have taken control. Now, Bashar al-Assad has ordered his forces to retreat from the Aleppo areas down to this area right here called Safira. So they've pulled out of these territories and they've regrouped here at this area called Safira. Now, why is this significant? Well, look at this area right here is still not under rebel control. This is Tel Rifat and Manbij. Manbij is a very big city, and Tel Rifat, there are many refugees that are here that flooded into rebel-controlled areas dating back some years ago. Now, the problem that Bashar al-Assad is going to quickly face is how is he going to maintain these areas? He's not going to be able to, because he is going to be effectively surrounded. So they'll probably have to make some kind of deal to get those who want to leave those areas, if a deal will be made. But the reality is that Manbij and Tel Rifat are almost certain to fall. So we're going to have to be keep our eyes on that. In going back to the other map that we have here. Okay, so this is the Al-Bab area. Now, the Al-Bab area has a lot of rebel forces here, and they're going to look to push down so that they can complete the entire takeover of the governorate of Aleppo. Now, up here with Tel Rifat and Manbij, look for those forces to go this direction so that they can pressure these forces into surrendering. And Assad probably wouldn't have much to be able to do about it. Now, let's go and talk about the Russians, which is very, very interesting, because the Russians released a statement going back just a few hours ago saying, of course, that they would call the rebel fighters terrorists, but they made mention that they hope, hear me, they hope that Damascus will restore order after attacks by the terrorists. Okay, let's examine the statement. Number one, the skies over Aleppo, for the most part, were bereft of almost any aircraft. That includes the Russians, who carpet bombed to be able to take these territories from rebel forces. And I literally use the word carpet bombed. Now, this is significant because the Russians are nowhere to be found. In these areas right here, in Tel Rifat and also in Manbij, Russia pulled its forces out in the last few days from these areas. And now they're using terminology like, we hope Damascus is going to restore order. In other words, we're busy in the Ukraine, we can't help you, good luck. And that's basically what's happened. Now, they've got their bases out in the Tartus area, which is their only military base that they have in the entire Middle East. They're going to look to maintain that. So they're out in Tartus and the Khomeini areas, and it looks like they're going to stay there and kind of watch and see what happens. I think that they don't have the horses to be able to actually do anything for the for Bashar al-Assad and his campaign here. So that's where we are with the maps. Let's go to some of your questions. Let's see what your comments or concerns are. Okay. All right. First up, we've got, will the rebels take Aleppo and continue towards Damascus? I believe that the rebels will continue and take all of Aleppo. Will they continue to Damascus? No, I don't. Damascus is a long way. That's going to need preparation. It's not going to happen just like that. However, I want everybody to be cognizant of something here. This is a complete and total meltdown of the Syrian Arab army. The rebel forces literally cut from the Idlib areas here all the way to Aleppo in 65 hours. Now, that's got to say a lot about Bashar al-Assad's ability to defend himself. Obviously, he doesn't have it. Even their Air Force wasn't present and was not supporting their troops on the ground. That's the reality of the situation here. So if they could do that in 65 hours, we may, and I don't want to become overly optimistic here, but how deep does this Syrian Arab army implosion actually go? Now, he's looking to regroup here at Safira, but what does that actually mean? And what about his forces in other areas around the country, like Homs, like Hama, and even in Damascus? Are they ready for a fight? Well, we're going to have to take a look at that, and we're going to have to follow it up. I don't know the answer to it, but that's my analysis of it. Asif Wali says, may Allah help them liberate all of Syria. Ameen. Ameen. But we also want them to govern with justice. Okay. We've got here another question. Why did they launch the offensive now? Why did they wait 4 years? Well, actually, it's been more than 4 years, but let's continue. Taking advantage of weakness of al-Assad's allies, Iran shaking at Israel's threats, Hezbollah facing Israel, Russia focused on Ukraine. That's pretty much it. They're very focused on other enemies. The Russians have major issues in Ukraine. Joe Biden has given the green light for U.S. Ordnance or bombs and rockets to be fired inside of Russia for the first time just a little more than a week ago. So they've got more problems on their plate over there. I just don't think that they can a continued campaign here in the rest of Syria. Now, they're going to maintain this out in Tartus and Khomeini. That, I think you can rest assured. And I don't think that rebel forces actually need to go to even think about that for right now. At the end of the day, Syria is a big country, big land expanse. They need to pick their enemies and see what they can ultimately do. Okay. Hezbollah, which is a very big part of the taking of territory and holding their territory, they've got major issues that they're facing back in Lebanon. As everybody knows, they're under intense, or were under intense fire from the Israelis. Now, while a truce has been reached there, that's a 60-day truce. That doesn't mean that the fighting has ended, and more than likely, it is very possible that Netanyahu could restart the attacks on Lebanon at any time, number one. Now, the other issue is that they have 60 days, I'm talking about the Israeli military, to pull out of southern Lebanon. Brother man, a lot can go on in 60 days, especially when you're dealing with an Israeli government that you cannot trust, number one. And number two, they have the upper hand. Number three, they probably were just using this as an opportunity just to catch their military breath. So we'll be taking a look and we'll be seeing that. And of course, the Iranians and the Israelis who've done a lot of, like, I would probably say it's kind of like this kind of, we used to watch karate movies and they would fake like they hit each other and all. That's pretty much what they've been doing. Well, the Iranians have gotten smacked a bit, but they haven't really responded to the Israelis. We'll wait and see what's going on there. Okay, Renaissance Tide. They say, how much of Aleppo has been taken back? Well, as we showed earlier, and I can probably just show you again here on this map, all of this, okay, this is Aleppo, okay? And there's more territory that's still there in Aleppo. But this is the portion there in the middle of the city of Aleppo. And this is the governorate of Aleppo. So as you can see, this is rebel-controlled territory, Assad-controlled territory. Even this red right here has become rebel-controlled territory. That yellow right there was territory which was under the control of Assad and Kurdish forces, but that's under threat. That's under big-time threat. Now, I hope that I answered that. Next. Will the cooperation between HTS and the Syrian National Army continue in time? Time is going to tell. It would be great if the rebel forces could all work together, but it's the important thing is that if Islam and the rulings of Islam are going to be the governing force behind this relationship, then I believe it'll be successful. If it's not, then it'll just be a dog-eat-dog world, and we pray to Allah that that does not become the situation. Ameen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Muhammad Denik says, what do you think was the motivation? Do you think Turkey ordered it, or has Jolani been replaced? I don't think that Turkey ordered it, no. And I don't know if Turkey was pushing for it. I don't think that they were. I don't have any indications that they were, but Turkish-backed forces have joined the fray. I think after the attacks started, then Turkish-backed forces jumped into the fray. So that gives me the idea that those forces were not primed and trained to join in that fight, and they kind of joined in as last-minute reinforcements. So that gives me the idea that Turkey was not the driving force behind this. There are other driving forces behind it, I believe, which is a story for another day. So we'll just have to wait and see. Next, Renaissance Tide says, is it true that drones have been supplied by Ukraine? I couldn't imagine that Ukraine would supply anyone over here with drones when they need them themselves, more than anybody over here needs them. Next, where is the FSA? Is it still there in Syria? The Free Syrian Army has basically morphed into the National Syrian Army. The NSA. So much of those FSA groups have joined over. Next, El-Jolani said to respect Christian and other religious minorities. Will this be the case? Well, if I'm looking at it from the fighter's perspective, that are on the ground, I would probably say that that will be true. But it would be true from their perspective and not necessarily Jolani's perspective, because Jolani cannot be trusted at all. Will Assad's allies let Assad's regime fall? I don't think that it's an issue of will they let it or not, meaning whether they would choose to intervene or not. Let's look at their allies. Assad's allies are as follows: Russia, Iran, Hezbollah. Those are their main allies. Russia is knee deep in a fight that could see them squaring off against U.S. forces in no time at all. Joe Biden, as we made mention, gave the green light for U.S.-made bombs to be fired into Russian territory, and that's huge. Of course, Russia then retaliated with rhetoric talking about nuclear weapons and so on and so forth. Now, if there's any rhetoric about nuclear weapons, then you know that the regular weapons that they've been supplying to other countries are not going anywhere, because the homeland of Russia takes precedence over any other external conflict. That's Russia. Iran, it's known that they're in a tit for tat with Israel, and America could join that front at any time should Iran make any false moves. Iran knows that, and they're having their own problems right there in Iran. Hezbollah got smashed by the Israelis in many different ways. Their top leadership were all killed. Southern Lebanon is occupied by Israeli forces, and they've totally demolished whole villages, as we saw on TV. So Hezbollah has not been a force, and they really haven't shown up. I'm not sure if they're still here. We're going to have to wait and see when they go into those Tel Rifat and the Manbij areas, if they're still around. Next. Is it another Western front against Russia? Western backed? I can't answer that question at this moment. In a few days, I might. I have some theories. I have some things that I need to check, because I'm not a conspiracy theorist. But I will say one thing, that at this moment in time, the Syrian people deserve to enjoy this moment. Rebel forces are on the ground and they're pushing forward. And I would say until we have more substantiated proof, I think we should leave it there. But probably in about 2 or 3 days, we'll be having a live session talking probably about this in and of itself. Okay. Salam Bilal, walaikum salam wa rahmatullahi. German force says, is this a Mossad operation, or why does HTS take action now right after the Israel-Lebanon ceasefire? I don't want to overanalyze this thing, okay, because the preparations were made going back months ago. But there's an interesting thing that you brought this up. Russia actually put on their RT website that this was a surprise rebel attack. It wasn't a surprise. Everybody knew about the preparations being made for this attack, to the extent that Assad moved its assets from Damascus to these areas. And this is going back more than 6 weeks ago. So this was not a surprise attack. It was known it was going to happen, but we're going to be discussing more about that in a few days. Do I think it's a Mossad operation? I don't. But we'll have to wait and see what the fallout of this is. But no, I don't see that this was a Mossad operation, no. Bird Nest Rat Fest said, Assalamu alaikum. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. All right, let's see what we have here. Faiz Shakir Chowdhury says, what do you think will rebel pursue Syrian Arab army till Hama? If Hama is not secured, then defending Aleppo would be quite troublesome. Not necessarily, not necessarily. Um, but do I think that they'll continue to Hama? I don't. I don't. I think that they'll stop at Aleppo and then maybe assess the situation where there's some agreements in place ahead of time. That's what we're going to discuss in a few days. But I don't say that they're going to go to Hama at this time. No, I don't think that. Islam audio station says, Assalamu alaikum, wa alaikum salam, wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. What could be the reason why they started this offensive? Well, since they got kicked out of Aleppo back in January 2017, it's been 7 years. So I don't know if that would be, a rush to start the offensive, but there are a couple of theories that are out there that we're trying to see what made this a ripe and opportune time. Um, the prevailing theory on the table is that Russia's busy in Ukraine, and the skies above Aleppo are testament to that they were empty of Russian aircraft. The bombings that basically took place were best bombings in the city of Idlib, bombing civilians. Hezbollah, very busy with their war with Israel. And thirdly, Iran also has been really busy for a lot of different reasons, which I think has been well documented. Next. Sadaqah Jariyah says, Bilal, do you think that this advancement was intended by HTS al-Jawlani, or did it go out of his control? I think it's out of his control. I do think it's out of his control. Ali 45 says, any hope for Palestinians? There's always hope, brother. When you have Allah, there's always hope. And then he went on to say, could the HTS rebels be a source of problem to Palestinian resistance? I don't see how they could be a problem for Palestinian resistance, because someone may say, okay, well, wait a minute. Assad has been against Israel. Well, we don't see much evidence of that. Did they throw any rockets in that direction? Any bombs? Any troops were pressuring the Israelis who were on their border in the Golan Heights and such like that? Did they throw a rock? Angry words? No, they didn't. And then he went on to say, or will they help them? It's easy to say to go in and help them, but at this moment in time, they're a long way away. I mean, Aleppo is in the north. Those other areas are in the south. So, no, don't count on that anytime soon, even if the intention is there. Takfirian Rager, thing is, just saw they end up besieged again like 2016. Inshallah, they won't. They've got territory that they didn't have before. So we'll have to wait and see. Takfirian Rager went on to say, also the people wanted to remove Jolani due to his torture and murders. Now they're okay with him because he's fighting Bashar. I don't think that they're okay with him, but people do like military victories. But the problems that they have with Jolani haven't gone away. I don't think that we should make assumptions that the people all of a sudden are okay with him, because they're not. But at the end of the day, he's a part of the fighting force, which is taking territory back, territory that hasn't been taken back since the formation of Hayat Tahrir Sham. So we'll have to wait and see how that's going to play out. But I don't think that they're all of a sudden okay with Jolani. No, I don't think that. Well, Ali 45 is saying, why isn't the SDF, which are the Kurdish forces, being repelled out? Why don't rebels attack the SDF? Well, the rebels, let me see if I can pull this map up here again. All right. Now, where do we go? Okay. SDF, YPG, and Kurdish militia forces can be found in some of these areas here. All right. Now, rebel forces have basically surrounded them. So they've done a smart thing. They didn't take them on head to head, but they're going to be virtually surrounded. So I think it was a smart move on the part of the rebel forces. Do you think Turkey has advisors on the ground and potentially giving commands? I would say that the Turks are probably loosely involved in the situation, but I don't think that it's totally under their control. I am not 100% certain that all of the forces on the ground are probably under one person's control. Because you've got to understand that the Euphrates Shield forces that filled in are not under HTS's control. HTS is not under their control. They're working together. There's cooperation in their Ghorfat Amaliya, or the operations room. But to say that Jolani controls the forces that came from the Euphrates Shield and the Olive Branch areas, now that's not true. That's not true. Okay, next. Also, what role does ISIS have? Because the most attacks on the regime have been by ISIS this year. Do you think they will try to spoil it by attack the rebels from the back? Well, there's no back really here for them to attack as they have done in the past, because they were more prevalent in those areas, and therefore they could launch attacks and stab rebel forces in the back. A lot's changed since that time. They're primarily in the desert regions. They can probably play the role of the spoiler in that they can pull off assassinations, car bomb attacks, and such like that, but they don't have the horses currently to take over territory. Next, do you envision Iran sending troops as a last-ditch effort to save Assad? No, I don't. I don't think that they can afford them, because they might be fighting a major war on their own soil with the whole Israeli situation unfolding, and with Donald Trump's new presidency. Remember, Qasem Soleimani was killed under the Donald Trump administration, and Trump is back and he's looking for blood. So I don't think that Iran is going to spare their troops to save the decrepit regime of Bashar al-Assad. I just don't. All righty. Okay, let's see if we can take one more. We've got Sam M, who says, Salam alaikum, dearest brother. Good to see you reporting as always. Love your content, love and du'as from your brother in the Bay Area. And may Allah give you and your family that which is good for dunya wa fil akhirah. Ameen, ya akhi. Ameen. What is exactly the position of Jolani? How much power does he have? Well, with all of the new changes that are taking place right now, that's not entirely clear. I'm not sure what kind of control he's going to ultimately have over these new areas which have been taken. I just don't know the answer to that question. I know that he controls Idlib and those surrounding areas, but he's got thousands of armed forces in those territories. How's he going to manage that? Is he in the same situation of position of power, or are there new power brokers on the table? Well, we're going to have to wait and see. All right. We're going to leave it there. All right, guys. Look, my name is Bilal Abdul Kareem for Q&G. Jazakumullah khair for joining us. We will be back shortly in another 2 days to cover some more changes which are on the ground. We might even be back tomorrow. So stay tuned for that. Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum.